So I just finished talking to a friend. Clearly I was like taking a nap, so just like don't mind my setup. But we were talking about how in the next few years, race will not be a conversation. And that's kind of just like inevitable for where we are today. I think that the concerted amount of effort to just kind of like debunk race and all of those things, like, it's interesting. But do I think that this will be a good or a bad thing? That's very interesting as you pose the question, as we realize that, interracial relationships and like mixed children and things like that, that would be more of a thing. I think our society is becoming more like interracial. I think in part, yes, but I think it's still a sad thing, right? And let me tell you why. Because I think what the American institutionalized learning system has done for African Americans is that it has made Black people think that they are relegated to deprivation through the acknowledging and the learning of their history. It's made white people think that Black people acknowledging their history and learning about their history subjects them to rage or like an anger or, just like assuaging a certain level of guilt or more so like responsibility for the historical events that have taken place in the society. Do I think that this information will be needed in the future? No, I actually don't, unfortunately, because I think schools are changing, right? Educational systems are changing. I'm not really sure what that's going to look like in the future for us. People don't really like learning about certain things, or even just rather learning for the sake of learning, right? That's not something that people really gravitate towards. We are a more entertainment-centered society, so we really are about convenience and entertainment. So that's going to be our focus, our primal focus, and it's going to be about capitalism. It's going to be about commercialization. So there really won't really be a need for intellectualism, books, or just great philosophical, information. That's not going to be a thing anymore. We're going to move towards a society that really focuses on entertainment, that really focuses on, just other things. I think that we'll always kind of have marginalized groups, but I think the marginalized groups that we'll have will be the ones that kind of piggyback off of the history of oppression and the realism of oppression. So I don't think that we'll have like real marginalized groups. I think we'll have people who will kind of like replicate that story and then kind of just like fabricate that and then just kind of, play into that and find some weird thing into that. And I think that those people will be people who struggle with mental health and they struggle with certain capabilities just in their own lives, whether, they feel like they look a certain type of way, so they're discriminated against or something like that. I think it will be more so manufactured victimization versus real victimization, which there's proof of. And we talk about victimization and when people talk about African American history. And I think one of my rebuttal will always be, one thing I realize with a lot of people who refute African American history is that it really impresses me how bold people are to refute an idea or to refute certain philosophy, and you've never read a book. You've never even read a book about African American history, and you're so like, you know what I mean? And I think that's so interesting to be so puffed up in something that is an argument that is really baseless. That's really crazy. And I think one thing that will always be really unfortunate about, certain people who just, feel as though the work is meaningless or the work was meaningless or there hasn't been, certain things, right? They don't want to talk about it or whatever. Kind of like losing my train of thought here. But I think one thing that will always be unfortunate about that group of people is that you never really had the opportunity to learn and grow, but you always had a desire to be a part of a thing, but you never really had a desire to learn about a thing, so I don't know. I think in part that will give some people a benefit to create their own thing, but I think you will always kind of feel that sense of lack of authenticity, because I think we exist in a world where truth reigns. And, it's kind of like, the Bible talks about truth, the word of God, let me just say that, being a double-edged sword. So I think we'll always kind of exist in a space where people will feel uncomfortable about certain things and they won't really have any context, right? So I think what we're really doing, we say, let's not talk about race anymore. It's, race is going to be taboo in the future. I think what we're really doing is just taking away language, taking away articulation, and we're not really giving people opportunity to express and articulate themselves and what they're feeling, right? They no longer are going to have context. So I think what people are going to do is they're going to start to kind of look outside of themselves. That may be the result of, consumerism. So people are probably going to go online and start to find things. I think we kind of see this with the start of misdiagnosis. So a lot of people are coming online, diagnosing themselves with anxiety and things like that. Pharmacists, doctors, and therapists more specifically are making a lot of money during this time because a lot of people are misdiagnosing themselves. So I think we're going to see an increase in chemical dependence. I think we're going to see an increase in therapeutic practices. And so I think we're going to be a little bit more dependent on our conveniences rather than just kind of like being alone with ourselves and our thoughts. I think one thing people don't understand about the Black conservatives who have gone so far to kind of express more so like an unnecessary disagreements, right? And I don't want to say unnecessary disagreements, but I think that's just like for lack of better terms, right? People who are just going so far, Black Americans who are like, Black people are just this and they're that and they're that. I think you have to understand that we live in a society where people make choices and they do the best with what they have and where they're at, right? So if you're in an environment, it's sink or swim. This is the way that where you can swim and survive and or you can sink by if you speak the truth or if you say certain things, right? Because we also have to understand that when you speak the truth about a thing, there's a cost that comes with speaking the truth, right? People don't like when you speak the truth, right? Peterson talked about that. Like, yes, there are consequences for speaking the truth. So you have to understand that as well, So it's like a lot of people who are in these spaces and you're like, yes, see, this person agrees, they're progressive or whatever the case may be, whatever idealizations that you have about this specific person on a platform, you have to understand that we live in America. So this is survival, babe. This is survival. You can't necessarily take someone who did what they had to do to get out of a certain situation or a certain environment as truth, because that's just the realism of American society, right? That's the American dream. It's a matter of making something out of nothing, so no judgment there. But I think when you start talking about seeking truth and answers and you start talking about intellectualism and academia, you have to understand like there is context that is missing there. And because we're pushing towards a society where, like I said, those are conversations we no longer seek to have. I think it's going to be, I don't think that there will be room for intellectualism. I think that all of us who are book readers, who are historians and so forth, right? I think that we will kind of just, we'll exist in certain spaces, but I don't think that it will be anything mainstream. And I don't think it ever really has been mainstream. But I think, like I said, one of the biggest grievances is for a lot of people who just never really got to learn about their history, right? You're going to have a lot of people who just never really got to learn about the truth of America, the truth about Black people. And so I think you'll have a little bit of repetition. I think you'll have a little bit of lostness, but I think most importantly, it'll just be like grievance of the mind, right? Lack of knowledge, lack of intelligence and pertaining to certain things. But like I said, I think for some people, and let me actually say this, because the more I talk, the more I'm getting a resolve, right? I think it was Carl Jung who said that, and I could be wrong. It may not have been Jung, but it's one of those guys who pretty much said that, like, the more you talk, dialect provides a sense of clarity. So I'm actually reaching a resolve with this video. So thanks for watching and, continuously. But I actually realized that because we don't know our history, what's going to happen is that we are going to assimilate to somebody's culture, right? And it's not going to be this thing where, okay, you take away our history, you ban the books, right? We reject intellectualism. We reject this really, really grotesque aspect of American history that honestly was pretty significant, right? And it is a byproduct of why things are the way they are today. It gives us context. It gives us explanation for why things are the way they are today. We're going to just completely take that out. We're going to throw it away. We're going to cast it away, and we're going to ban and punish anybody who actually speaks about it and educates on the matter. I think what you're going to have is a lot of people are actually going to start to assimilate towards other cultures. You have to understand, from a biological standpoint, humans are very tribal. So when you take away this culture, you take away this community, you take away this aspect of it, people are just going to assimilate more towards the other culture, the more prevailing culture, right? And so I think that's what you're going to have. And that's going to bring a sense of identity crisis, because one thing that will be consistent is the culture in that, that culture that people assimilate towards, right? their continuation, right? They're sustaining and the protection, the collective protection of their ideas, their ideology. So while we're all assimilating because we've been forced to forego our community and our history, we're going to be assimilating towards this culture that has not been forced to forego their culture and their history. And so I think you may have a little bit more, I don't know how you're going to give context to microaggressions. I don't know how you're going to give context to racism. I don't know how you're going to, so I actually think you're going to probably make some cultures a little bit more vulnerable. And I'm not really sure if that's the goal. But I think when we start looking at, American society, I don't know. So I hope you're following me there. I'm definitely not one to kind of spell it out. I always like to kind of just come on again, share the things that interest me. I definitely think it's a conversation for people who are thinkers, right? People who like to just engage in conversation and engage in dialogue, people who like to read books and form connections. So that's really what I do. But I do think that part is probably going to be very concerning. What is that going to look like? And then, when you remove the language, how do you describe certain behaviors from a certain particular group that everybody has assimilated to, right? Because of this is bad, we can't talk about this, that didn't happen, right? You know what I mean? And when you start to assimilate to this, then what does it become, right? Because somebody has to be the standard. Somebody has to be the role model. Somebody has to be the representative of a thing. And because we're moving towards society where, first of all, we already know, and I don't understand why people, actually I do understand. And I'm going to get into that in this next 3 minutes. But I think what's so interesting about it is you have so many people who are oh, well, we're represented in certain spaces. I think that one of the biggest, or probably one of the saddest things about American institutionalized learning and just American culture in general, it's really just a lack of intelligence. It's not really conspiracy. It's just really generally a lack of intelligence. People can literally see something on the TV. They say, hey, look, buy this specific brand of milk. Cows are this, you know what I mean? And people will just buy it. And they're like, look, see, I told you it's happening. See, look. And it's there is absolutely no credibility. There is no questioning of a thing. There is no just pure curiosity. It's something that has completely died. And I do believe that, they say, curiosity is something that has to be nurtured. So quite frankly, I think that we should be a little bit more appreciative of those who are critical thinkers and those who are curious about the messages and the imagery and things like that, because, well, many of us don't really have that curiosity. And I think that that's kind of where the envy comes from, because I'll be seeing y'all in the comments and y'all be acting a little crazy. And, me personally, I'm no smarter than, hey, I know a few things. I don't know all things. But it's one thing about it, I probably wouldn't veer on any turf if I felt uncomfortable, if I felt the need to refute, if I didn't agree, if I found nothing, valuable about the content. I have no desire in the exploitation of others. But I think what we really wish we had was mind control of ourselves. I think we wish we had the opportunity to think for ourselves, form our own opinions, and have some level of intelligence about a certain thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a particular thing, but I think because many of us are, born and bred in a culture where we have specialized knowledge, we are really deprived of a lot of things. And so, that comes from independent study. And I think that that's where the envy comes from. I'm not really feeling it, but I think that is a thing. I think that's a thing. So back to what I was saying about my 3 points. My 3 minutes as I'm concluding, because I kind of tried to fit a lot in this video, and I really hope that it makes sense. I hope you were able to follow it. I just would say overall, I think you're going to have people who just pretty much assimilate to somebody's role model, right? Somebody has to be the guiding line. We talk about individuality and authenticity. But it's not really a thing. You typically that's not really a thing, right? I think if you're authentic and original, then you just have to have very peculiar experiences, because we're born and bred in cultures of conformity, so no. Right? And I think this is why when we have just a little taste of authenticity, a little taste of originality, we seek to milk it. We have to milk it. We have to make them famous. We have to milk them like a mule, and we have to capitalize off of that, because that is rare. So I'm being a little extra in this video, but nonetheless, Yeah, and I think it's very unfortunate. People who say, why do we keep talking about things? Why do we keep talking about this? Why do we keep talking about that? Well, why do we keep talking about, politics, right? Why do we keep talking about the things that we talk about, right? Politics is, you look at these rooms, hey, you know what I mean? We don't really have to spell it out, but it's very evident that many of us are never going to be in a position to make a decision, So, I mean, hey, why do we talk about a lot of things that we talk about? Why do we complain about things? Why do we talk about our marriages? Why do we talk about our children? Why do we talk about a lot of things? So I just think that overall, find your side of the internet. I hope that this video, you got something from it. I think what I'm going to name this video is what happens when we no longer talk about race. I kind of dropped some ideas there, some of my predictions, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. And again, if you didn't take anything from the video, please unsubscribe, go find you something else to do. Okay. And, have a nice life, because I don't know you, you don't know me. And, come on, let's all be friends.